I'm Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond. I'm a literacy specialist, and in this video, I'm going to share with you 3 common mistakes that many teachers make when they're setting up their phonics routines in kindergarten, 1st, or 2nd grade. If you want your literacy block to run more smoothly and you want to really meet the needs of all of your students, this video is going to make it a lot easier for you to do that. First, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, it would mean so much to me if you would do that now, and then also hit the little bell so that you don't miss out on any of the brand new videos I post about teaching literacy. Mistake number 1 is either skipping assessments or not giving students the right phonics assessments. Now, this tip is mostly relevant for 1st and 2nd grade teachers, or I would say 1st grade and up, but if you're a kindergarten teacher, stay tuned because there are still bits of information from this tip that can benefit you. Schools differ a lot in what they require you to give as far as assessments at the beginning of the school year. You might have to give students a screener, or students might be given a screener by maybe your reading specialist that tests like how many letter sounds they can produce in a minute or how many words they can read in a passage in a minute. And those screener type of assessments are really beneficial. However, often those screener assessments do not include a phonics diagnostic assessment, and those are really important to give, so let's talk about what those are. A phonics diagnostic assessment is going to let you see exactly which phonics skills kids do and do not know, and that's information that really typically is not provided by most screeners. So for example, this sheet, this phonics diagnostic, is actually included in my phonics playbook. There are diagnostic assessments toward the end, and there's also some like accompanying documents that you can, print out online. So this comes from toward the end of the phonics playbook. But anyway, so, the skills that you're testing kids on will kind of vary depending upon what level they're at, but you might be looking to see, okay, not just how many letter sounds can they produce in a minute, but what are the letter sounds that they know and which ones do they not know? And then when it comes to different phonics skills related to actual words, what short vowels do they know? What short vowels do they not know in reading CVC words? Do they know digraphs, double final consonants, blends, glued sounds? And of course, we can get more challenging, right? How do they do with diphthongs? How do they do with Greek and Latin roots? It's all going to depend just on where your kids are starting from, but this phonics diagnostic assessment is going to let you see, number 1, what types of words kids can read, and number 2, what types of words kids can spell. Because I always give both sides of it. It's important to see kids' spelling development typically lags behind their reading development, which is totally normal, but I want to know what they can decode and what they can encode or spell. Now, if you make the mistake of skipping this type of assessment and just maybe, diving straight into instruction, the problem is that kids will end up with gaps. So let's say that you teach 1st grade and your phonics curriculum, maybe it starts with like digraphs, or maybe it starts with blends because it assumes that in kindergarten, teachers, taught CVC words and kids learned this. That's great, but it's possible that number 1, kids slid back during the summer, or number 2, some kids didn't learn to read and spell CVC words, and so they've got these gaps. And so if you start right where your phonics curriculum starts and you just keep moving, these gaps are going to affect kids, right? Because they need to know short vowels. If their short vowel knowledge isn't firmed up, then when you get into long vowels, it's just going to create more confusion for them, right? So it's really important not just to say, okay, I'm going to only give the assessments that my school gives me, but to make sure that within those assessments, even if you have to add something of your own, you are giving kids some kind of diagnostic phonics assessment. We also know about phonics instruction or phonics learning that kids tend to develop skills sequentially. So it's not realistic for them to be working on long vowels, for example, even if you're starting in 2nd grade, if they haven't mastered short vowels. They're kind of moving up this staircase, right? And if they're missing steps, essentially missing skills, that's going to create problems, and we don't want that. Would love for you to leave a comment just saying yes or no if your school or if you give a beginning of the year phonics diagnostic assessment like this. Just let me know yes or no in the comments. Now, I also want to talk about something that goes along with this, right? So let's say your school has a phonics program, and let's use that 1st grade example again, but of course this applies to any grade level, I would say beyond 1st grade. And your school tells you, you have to teach this phonics program to these kids, and all the 1st grade teachers in the school, maybe even the district, this week you're doing this, part of the curriculum. This week you're doing this part of the curriculum. Like you have a pacing guide that you have to follow. And let's say you have that and you're required to follow that, but at the same time you have kids that have gaps, right? And you're looking at the results of your phonics diagnostic assessment, whether you use the one in the phonics playbook or something else, and you're like, well, we're not really ready to get started with the curriculum. We have these gaps, right? So what do you do then? Number one, I would definitely talk to your administration and just make it clear that like you have this data, like share the actual data, the results of the assessments with them. In the phonics playbook, you get these like class composites, so you can show your administrators really clearly, like this is what we're missing, and talk to them and see if you can get any kind of flexibility. Now, some phonics programs do provide a review at the beginning of the school year. My phonics program from Sounds of Spelling, we provide review, and I always tell teachers like spend as much time on this as you need. So you might have some review built in, but if you don't, I would definitely talk to your administrators. And if they're not letting you like go back and fill in gaps, not great. But what I would do is try to like weave in skills as you go. So if you're forced to start on digraphs, for example, and maybe we still haven't firmed up short vowels, well, digraph words like chat and shin, right? Those will have short vowels in them. So you can integrate work on short vowels just as like a quick review at the beginning of your lessons. You can spend a little more time talking about short vowels as the kids read and spell words with digraphs. So there's ways to work that in, but obviously, again, if you have a group of students who they are not starting at the place where your curriculum or your program is supposed to start, then the ideal is to be able to go back and address those gaps before you move on, but you can be flexible and kind of work things in even if you're not able to do that. Okay, moving on to mistake number 2 is trying to fit too much into each day. Now there's a ton of really effective phonics routines, and of course I cover them in the phonics playbook. I give you a really complete rundown of just these are the things that you can be doing that are high impact, that follow the research, that will get your kids learning phonics. But there are many valuable routines that you could use, a blending drill, dictation, word swords, reading decodables. There's so many things that are valuable and important to include. But what we don't want to do is try to cram too much into every day, because then we are going for quantity over quality. So instead of thinking of your phonics routines as just like, this is what I'm doing every day, think about across the week, right? Like maybe you don't always have a dictation every single day. Maybe, you're not reading a decodable every single day, but many of the days. In the phonics playbook, I actually give you some like real options for schedule with timing and the different routines, so you can kind of see what this might look like. But again, instead of cramming everything into each day, you want to think about like, okay, what does this look like across the week? And how do I progress in difficulty across the week? So let's say you're doing, a dictation on like Monday or Tuesday and then Wednesday, Thursday. Well, your dictation on Monday or Tuesday, and a dictation, by the way, is just essentially giving kids sounds, mostly words, potentially sentences to write. So working on spelling. And toward the beginning of the week, maybe your dictation is focused just on your new skill. But then maybe a day or two later, your dictation is not only focused on like silent E, long A spelled with silent E, like cake, rake, words like that, but you're also wrapping in review skills. So maybe you're pulling in some short A to get kids to compare and contrast, right? So there's a couple of ideas here. Number 1, don't try to cram too much into each day. But number 2, as you're thinking across the week, think about how your routines are going to change, because they shouldn't be the same from like Monday to Thursday or Monday to Friday, for example. Mistake number 3 is not carefully planning for transitions and your flow between activities. So one thing that's really fun about phonics is you can get kids using a lot of hands-on materials. You can have them using whiteboards, magnetic letters, maybe you have special blocks that have, letters on them, multi-sensory materials. Very cool, very fun, very hands-on. But the problem is that if you're spending so much time moving from one activity or one routine to the next, then you're wasting a lot of time. You're constantly going over time, right? Or maybe you're not getting to everything. And that's, of course, is not what we want. So at the beginning of the school year, or really whenever you need a reset, number 1, think through yourself, how can I make these transitions as seamless as possible? So maybe instead of, for example, like let's say you have sensory trays or something with sand, or you take sturdy paper plates and put colored sand in them and you stack them up, and then kids can get a tray and trace letters, something like that, right? Well, maybe instead of having all the class trays or paper plates in one place, maybe you break them up into table groups. And so that way, when kids are getting their materials out, maybe a table leader goes to their stack and brings it for their table group, rather than all the kids lining up and having to wait in one line to get their materials. That's just one example, but these are the things you want to think through. Like, how can you get the materials distributed to kids in the least time possible with the least potential for, like, I don't know, kids getting into arguments, bumping into each other, wasting time, right? And then of course we have to teach kids these routines. We have to take enough time at the beginning of the year or whenever you need a reset to model, to have the kids practice with our support before we ask them to just do this as part of a phonics lesson. Before we dive into the curriculum, ideally we need to have a couple of days set aside for them to do things like just explore the materials. Maybe eventually you're going to use magnetic letters to build words. Great. Let them play with the magnetic letters for a little bit. Let them make their names with magnetic letters. Let them play in the sensory material, right? It just takes a few minutes at the beginning of the year, but you're giving kids an opportunity to explore the materials. And after they get to do that, then you can focus on having them learn how to transition. You know, is there a certain chime you use? Is there like a cleanup song or a bell that you use so that they know it's time for the next one? Are you using a timer to check them? Okay, let's transition in 1 minute or less. How do they know where to go to get their stuff? All of those little details need to be taught. And so at the beginning of the year, before we dive into teaching all the things with phonics, it's really important to take a couple of days and let them explore materials and then work on just transitions and expectations so that when it's time to add in that phonics instruction, they're ready to go and you're not wasting any time. Okay, so those are my 3 tips, but I actually have a bonus tip for you. And this is really key. My bonus tip is just be ready to make adjustments. You can have the best plan in the world, right? You can study the phonics playbook and have it all figured out and all laid out and all perfectly organized. But kids are humans, right? And we are humans. And sometimes we might find that the best plan that looks great on paper isn't actually working for whatever reason. So, you know, be flexible, right? If kids seem disengaged during some part of the lesson, maybe they need a movement break first. You know, maybe you've taught the procedures, but then they're confused. Go back and teach them again, right? Maybe you're always running out of time in your lessons. Well, maybe we need to shrink something. Maybe they only read half of the decodable text on one day. Or maybe you save the magnetic letter building for the next day, right? There's tweaks that have to be made. You know, I've been doing this for a long time and I still have to just get in there with my kids and see how it flows. So always be flexible. Don't beat yourself up. You know, perfection is not possible. We're working with real little humans here. So just be flexible and let it grow with your class. Because even something that works at the beginning of the year, especially with kindergarten, because they grow and change so much and what they're able to do, your routine should be able to grow and change with them too. If you want to learn more about building phonics routines, you want to have actual schedules that really work in the classroom, and above all, you want to be able to differentiate your phonics instructions so that you can actually meet the needs of the kids in front of you, you are going to love the Phonics Playbook. This is the book I wrote that is designed to be so practical. It starts with research, but it's not just theoretical. This is all about how to actually make this stuff work in your classroom, provide excellent phonics instruction to your students. Whether you have a program you're following or not, this is going to help you meet all your kids' needs and also stay organized. So I'll leave a link for this in the caption. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful. Before you leave, don't forget to hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in my next video.